Please have a seat. We're about to begin. Welcome. My name is Sebastian Rubens-Roja. I'm the headmaster of St. Andrews, for those who don't know me. Thank you very much for coming tonight. It's a very special evening for us today. For those who are parents of the school, you may have heard me say before that one of the aspects of the vision for this campus is to turn it into a home for lifelong learning for all of us. That, of course, includes and starts with our children who are currently students, but that also includes yourselves as parents, as alumni, and as future parents and future alumni, or former parents for former alumni. So we really want to foster in this home, in this campus, a place where all of you will want to come, to reinvent yourselves, to think about new ways of being, of thinking, and to expand your own horizons, your own skills and abilities, and your own ways to see the world. So we're calling this space the Lifelong Learning Center, and officially today what we're doing is we're starting a series of presentations from speakers who will inspire us, who will make us think, who will help us grow. And we'll have a program curated for this year. It's going to be our first year of many. We want you to come forth as a mother St. Andrews student right now has actually helped us bring our speaker today. It's Janina. Please, Janina, raise your hand. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And the whole KRB team and Jonathan, please come forth with ideas, with suggestions of speakers, and we'll have a discussion of what we can offer to the rest of the community. The power of this network and that we have to actually unleash is infinite. It's up to us to make, to go for the stars, our famous Sigitura d'Astra. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce David Orban. David Orban was with our students today, and it was a privilege to count with his presence for over 2 or 3 hours. He had lunch with some students. The lunch was supposed to last for an hour or so, 45 minutes, and I was told it lasted for almost 2 hours. Now, the basic premise in those exchanges were the questions and the inspiration that the students had, and I'm sure it's going to be hard to beat because they asked excellent questions. And after David's presentation, the mic will go to you, so become those lifelong learners that we can all be, and try to match the questions of some of your children that were asking really very intelligent and interesting questions this morning. So without further ado, David Orban, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. Yo hablo un poquito de español, pero mi vocabulario no es suficiente por exprimir a la charla en los tópicos que nosotros cubrimos esta sera. And so I will speak to you in English. Apologies. It is an absolute honor and a pleasure to be here today with you as the opening keynote lecturer for the lifelong learning series that you are starting and we are starting today. For me, it is always just a starting point to give these talks because there are always more questions that we can answer. Maybe some questions come into your mind after we leave this wonderful building, and I invite you to feel free to connect on the various platforms, LinkedIn that many of you, for example, may use, or others, or just send me an email. I'm very easy to find, and send me your further additional questions. Continuing these conversations is important. I was part of the group that in 2008 designed Singularity University. As a matter of fact, one of our team members from those years came to greet me, and I'm very happy to meet him again. I used in 2010 the first time a quantum computer to solve some relatively simple but not that simple problems. In 2011, I started investing in Bitcoin. People would come to me maybe a year later, hearing me talk about Bitcoin and say, "Oh my God, David, I heard you talking about this and I thought it was nothing and totally discarded it. Now it's too late. Bitcoin is $10. I cannot do anything." Or At other conferences, an additional year later, somebody would say, oh, Bitcoin is now $100, it's too late. I invested in the first launch of Ethereum and many, many other projects, both in artificial intelligence, in blockchain, that touch healthcare, real estate, energy, agriculture, transportation. And we are going to talk about these topics because I want to inspire you to take first important steps in a journey that is not going to end, that your children are trained to explore very openly. But I am telling you, your age is not your biological age. Today, your age is whether your mind is open to the wonderful new things that the world is showing us. New things that are quite experimental sometimes. I implanted a chip in my hand in 2014 or 15 as an experiment as well to see what happens. And we may want to talk about that as well. The Network Society group of companies is comprised of a research think tank, an investment firm, and the consulting group Network Society Lab, with offices in Brisbane, Australia, Johannesburg, South Africa, Malta, Europe, San Francisco, United States. And we are so proud to announce the launch of our Latin American operations, headquartered here in Buenos Aires, led by Jonathan Agerbe, who is here today, and I'm sure you will have the opportunity to meet him as well. Our world today is full of unexpected consequences that the intersection and the interaction of many technologies are showing us. You may recognize the image on the left of the screen. It's a self-driving car by Google. But you may ask yourself, what does it have to do with the other image, which is a synthetic 3D printed human heart? It doesn't exist yet, but people are working on it with great effort. And the relationship is that today, the first cause of death for people between 25 and 35 years of age is represented by car accidents. Over a million people per year die of car accidents. 30 million people per year remain severely disabled. And it is expected that self-driving cars will practically eliminate all of this, which is a wonderful news for everybody who is not dying, except for the people who were benefiting from the replacement organs, the transplants, that today come from dead people. And those of us who are donors of organs are fine, you know, after we are dead, we say, no problem, take everything. But the source will disappear, especially good young organs. And old people will say, hey, I need a new heart, I need a kidney, eyes, everything. And the new industry is already being born to provide this. What is going to happen to the business models of the insurance industry when DNA analysis is going to be universal? These are important questions, while simultaneously the trillion-dollar new industries are already being born everywhere, not only in Silicon Valley, but in China, in Africa, in Australia, and here in Latin America as well. There are plenty of so-called unicorns, startups that are worth more than $1 billion and that want to be worth $1,000 billion, just like the largest companies today. As a matter of fact, one of the questions that one of the co-founders with Ray Kurzweil, who is an inventor, Peter Diamandis, asks to our students in the fireside chats in the evening is, who wants to be a quadrillionaire? And we are talking about asteroid mining, colonizing the solar system, incredible achievements that are really on the horizon if we are ambitious, courageous, and daring enough to want to do those things. As he was born, 10 years ago at the NASA Research Park with funding from Google and others. I am a member of the faculty, an investor, and an advisor there. Our fundamental call to action is that we really can address the biggest challenges of humanity: energy, environment, poverty, security, using exponential technologies. Artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, networks, and computing systems like blockchain are going to have the same kind of curve that you very well know of rapidly improving performance, of rapidly decreasing prices, improving efficiency. And we are in the middle of a continuous disruptive innovation as companies find themselves competition from completely unexpected sources. And of course, this is very hard and generates a lot of uncertainty. But we believe that digitizing and dematerializing these technologies that initially may be available only for those who can afford them, a few, leads to demonetization, and at the end, they will be available for everybody. The simplest example of this, of course, is represented by the mobile phones that were the famous brick that would last 10 minutes and it would fry your brain while you were talking. And now all of us have literally supercomputers in our pockets. When these trends start, they are really almost invisible. Most of us would not think much about this sequence of numbers. The Human Genome Project started with $300 million of budget for 15 years of duration, and they had that kind of progression. 7 years, halfway through, they only achieved 1%. And they were almost in a panic, including the experts. They said, how can we make it? We will not be able to keep this going for 700 years. We don't have $30 billion or whatever the number would need to be. But some of them realized that they were not on this line. That is easy to confuse initially, but they were on the exponential curve. And that magical 1% is what they were seeing, because in the year 8, they were at 2. In the year 9, at 4. In the year 10, at 8, 16, 32, 64. And of course, they didn't go to 128. They stopped at 100, right on time, right on budget, proudly announced with the President of the United States at the time that they decoded the first human genome over the course of 15 years for $3 billion of cost. But technology didn't stop. Just like the phones become more performing, less expensive, DNA sequencing does the same as well. And so today, we have available to all of you complete gene sequencing for a few $1,000s, and it can be done in a few weeks. 2, 3 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, and it's done. And we already are designing the machines that in a manner of another 5, 6 years are going to be deployed, that will be able to decode entire human genomes at an incremental cost of a few cents in real time. This is the world of science fiction that you are living in today. And you can start thinking how the electronic brains of the 50s would become ever more integrated. As today we are reaching the limits of miniaturization, we are already thinking about quantum computers. Or how from punch cards that were the original way that we would program those electronic brains, we went to interactive terminals, still quite cryptic, specialized languages, and then computers started to understand that we have an aesthetic sense, that we like to organize our documents in certain ways, that actually we like color. And finally, just a few years ago, they liberated themselves from the limits and the constraints of the dimensions of our hands. We now have touchscreens that are minuscule like a clock, or huge like screens. And they started to understand and interpret our movements and our emotions They started to have conversations with us, and researchers are already working on what will be the next exciting or frightening interface that will enable direct computer thought connection. We will be able to do quite amazing things. Two of us with those headsets, for somebody from 100 or 200 or maybe just 30, 40 years ago, will look like magical telepathy. And basically, there is no need to call it with any other name. We will have achieved real, incredible science fiction powers. The same transformation is happening at the organizational level, because we are accustomed calling technologies certain things, but other things are technologies too. The way we build our businesses, our societies, our nations. And we used to do this in a very centralized and hierarchical level. If I were the Pharaoh, all of you would do what I say. And if I was wrong, well, it didn't matter. You would still have to do what I told you to do. And the Roman Empire the same, the monarch the same, and the presidents of some supposedly democratic countries the same. But we are learning that actually, thanks to the technologies that we are seeing, and I will illustrate shortly today, alternatives that are possible are emerging and are becoming ever stronger. I am not the only one thinking this. There are investors, inventors, people who create very important initiatives that are similarly enthusiastic about the power that the technologies are giving to all of us. It doesn't matter if we feel that we are not in the center of the world like Silicon Valley believes they are, or New York from a financial point of view. Innovation, passion, and creativity can flourish everywhere. Today, the tools are there and available. Solar energy, for example, is decentralized. Anybody can power their home, their building, office, and it doesn't require $1 billion investment and a 30-year return on the investment like it would be the case with oil, for example, or let alone nuclear energy. And more areas of the world achieve performance levels that make solar energy the cheapest, actually, energy source available. 3D printing and digital manufacturing that enables you to concentrate on the design, on the complexity, on the functionality of something where the machine takes care of embedding this design and complexity in the object, and the output's value is not proportional to the investment that is the initial capital of the machine, like it used to be with traditional manufacturing. Hydroponics that turns agriculture from a business whose output is proportional to the area available, very limited on the planet, where we are competing with our natural lungs, the Amazonian forests and others that we are depleting in order to increase our industrial agricultural output. Hydroponics enables us to turn agriculture in a business whose output is proportional to the volume available, because you can take solar energy, feed it through LED lamps, and you can go up in skyscrapers, or you can dig down in mines, and you can feed 20, 30, 50 billion people in the world. Synthetic meat, that is going to be extremely controversial in Argentina, where we love our asado, but I bet you the next dogma that is going to emerge in ever more powerful ways is a debate whether it is morally admissible to eat sentient creatures. Just like a dog dreams and we recognize that it is self-aware, we don't listen to the dreams of pigs or cows, but they are sentient as well. Personalized health that gives us the power to monitor our state of well-being and nurture our understanding of how we can do better in this world. Peer-to-peer learning, where really it is not like today where I pretend I have all the answers, but it is more a conversation. today with the students was amazing because they realized that they have the tools to acquire facts, and the teachers are there to shepherd them, but the point of the school is not to tell them what was the date of a war or what was the name of a general. They have Wikipedia, they have their mobile phones, and they can learn about how to have a good dialectic confrontation, how to de-escalate complex situations, how to have a critical thinking about a certain topic in order to recognize or understand what the deal is about fake news, how to think constructively about the challenges of workforce automation and the morality of artificial intelligence. These are the things that we can really learn from each other. Finance is a technology as well. And we have had centralized financial solutions for centuries, but today we have a decentralized one. We will spend more time about Bitcoin and blockchain. Airbnb, which I always prefer unless the organizer of a conference where I speak insists, oh no, please sleep at the 5-star hotel. And they don't realize that the local flavor of all the countries where I travel through Airbnb emerged so powerfully. And at the same time, at least from my point of view, Uber and Airbnb don't compete with the hospitality industry or the transportation industry. They are designing trust networks that enable us not to rely on the violence-based, inefficient enforcement mechanisms of traditional policing of our behavior. They are competing with police and the military. Policymaking itself, how we design better regulations. I have been here for 2 weeks, incredible meetings just like tonight. One of the first ones was with a group of regulators in Argentina who are trying to understand what to do about Bitcoin and blockchain. And I understand they have a hard job because just like teachers, we pretend that politicians have every possible answer. And they cannot say to their electorate, you know, I don't know, I'm not really sure. Let's try and then see if it works, and if it doesn't, we will try something else, right? Please vote. No, we are blindly driven to pretend that they are superhuman, and we pretend to believe when they say they have all the answers that they are right. Of course, this is not something that works, and so it is very important to find new ways to take advantage of what is possible today. Often you may read mainstream articles in various media that combustion engine car. Well, turns out it's totally not true, but you have a hard time, as well as when they say, oh, Bitcoin will go nowhere, it is going to die, actually it's already dead, and by the way, it is only used by drug dealers and terrorists. But if you look at them in this broader context, you understand that they are not a fad, just like the internet 30 years ago wasn't a fad. But what we have is an unstoppable change where we need to understand what is the tool set that lets us analyze and act around the unstoppable, unavoidable uncertainty that whether we are in New York or in Hong Kong is there, and it is not even proportional to our resources. Whether we are a small business, a medium business, or a huge business, this uncertainty is there. 100 years ago, if you were the CEO of one of the most successful companies in the world and you were included in the Standard & Poor's 500 index, the statistical chance that you would stay there was more than 60 years. 100 years later, the same level of success guarantees the inclusion in the index for little more than a dozen years. This is an objective measure of how uncertainty increased, how we have the need to decode the future with new tools, with new mindsets, without having a guarantee of the outcome. We have to try really to see what happens in order to experiment. That kind of experimentation that Kodak didn't want to do. They were, for 100 years, the absolute leaders of their industry. All of you loved Kodak, or Fujifilm, doesn't matter. Chemical photography was beautiful, but not many of you know that Kodak invented the digital camera. And year after year, the team who invented the digital camera would go back to the boardroom asking for money to improve it, and the board would reply, "You are joking. This behemoth weighing 100 kilos, taking 1,000 pixel image maybe for $100,000. Yeah, you may improve it a little, but our customers are National Geographic and Playboy. They will never buy something like this. They will need the beautiful chemical machines that we have been producing for 100 years. And the year that Kodak went bankrupt, laying off the last 10,000 people they had, was the year that Instagram was acquired by Facebook for over $1 billion, and the 12 people that created it. The one didn't believe in the future, the second did. This is another example. All of you had these. Well, not the banana necessarily, that Neo in Matrix famously lets fall from the skyscraper ominously, even if that wasn't the year that Nokia was facing the existential threat of the iPhone. After the iPhone came out, Nokia had the chance of saying, wow, this is something really new. We should pay attention. No, they did nothing wrong. Every step was right, but somehow they still lost, said in tears, literally, the last CEO of Nokia. When Leonardo invented the airplane 500 years ago, he didn't know how long it would take. It is actually hard to find the signal in the noisy environment when everybody tells you you are crazy. But those who really believe jump on the opportunity to create incredible futures. And authority doesn't always help. Lord Kelvin was the leading physicist of the time, saying human-powered flight would never be possible, and it was exactly the year that the Wright brothers were already testing successfully their airplanes. So, to go more in depth with what we are talking about, Bitcoin is the 21st century payment mechanism that internet didn't have. And when internet was liberated from being only a research and scientific project in the beginning of the 90s, everybody found themselves desperately searching for a solution and lazily adopted a 70-year-old technology, credit cards, being surprised in 2019 that, oh my God, we have so many instances of fraud and credit cards being stolen, tens of millions of numbers, and we always have to substitute them. There's little surprise. It is as if we had airplanes flapping their wings like we see in the early movies of the 20th century. It is evidently inadequate. Bitcoin and blockchain, on the other hand, have been created in order to introduce a concept that wasn't available before, so-called digital scarcity, because if I give you a $100 bill, I will not have it. And if I give you a Bitcoin, I will equally not have it, even though it is digital, contrary, for example, to an image. If I share a photo with you from my phone, I still have the photo, you have the photo, and Bitcoin is not like that. Now, I am not going to try to explain you exactly how it works, because instead of 45 minutes, I would have to talk for 45 hours, and I could, but let's not try to do that. But what matters is that you don't know how email works, but you are still using email. You don't know how WhatsApp works, you are still using WhatsApp. You will be using Bitcoin if you don't already use it, because it is incredibly superior to every other solution. When we invented PCs and started networking them, they were very unreliable. After a few dozen together, they would fail. And sometimes we still see, even if it is a question of primetime news when it happens, that Google or Facebook or Twitter have some error message, something went wrong. Bitcoin never fails. Never, ever fails. The only analogy that I could find, and I hope it will inspire you, is the replication of proteins via RNA and DNA in our bodies that is going on in trillions of cells, constantly, continuously, reliably, and has been going on for the past 4 billion years. That is the kind of reliability of this new infrastructure that is going to be achieved. The infrastructure, however, is just the basis. And even if you are leaders of your businesses and very eager to explore what this means, it is unlikely that you will work on the plumbing of Bitcoin and blockchain. The applications are interesting. Napster, for example, which some of you may remember, was experimenting. What would it mean to have peer-to-peer music distribution, including the fact that they wanted to be legal. But the Supreme Court of the United States killed them, including killing what could be this decentralized system at the time. And we are still happily subscribing to music on Apple's platform or Spotify or other things. The news is from yesterday. I don't know how many of you buy electronic books protected by so-called digital rights management protection that obsessively ask whether the $8 that you spent go into piracy, and your book checks with the server whether you have the right to read it. Because Microsoft yesterday announced that it wasn't working, and starting July they will stop selling electronic books, and as a consequence it would be not worth maintaining the server that confirms to your books that they are legal, and as a consequence your books will all die. Well, they will give you a refund. What? You thought you had those books, but you don't. And we have to be very careful, because more and more of the economy is turning into this strange relationship where you don't know what you own, what you have rights to, what you don't, and who you are beholden to. The new business models that Bitcoin and blockchain will enable through the digital scarcity that is unbreakably embedded into its decentralized and distributed systems are going to be absolutely winning and exciting, including the fact that these business models are open. I don't know how many of you have heard of the so-called ICO craze, the so-called initial coin offerings of 2017 that cooled off together with the exchange rate of Bitcoin towards the US dollar. It will come back, it's not too late. I cannot tell you when, but there will be new peaks, and Bitcoin is going to do its thing. What was very interesting at the time that we had new ways of experimenting with business models that were openly described. As an investor, 20 years ago, I would receive business plans that would carry all language, confidential, secret, do not share, blah, blah, blah. What matters is the ability to execute. The idea, sometimes, very, very seldom, you go patent it, and actually when you patent it, is disclosed as a contract, as an agreement exchange with the patent office and the nation that patents it for you. But the white papers of blockchain projects are voluntarily shouting to the world, this is what we want to do, and this is how we want to do it. Because they understand that today, in a global manner, whether we are talking about utility tokens that have certain characteristics or security tokens that work more like the traditional financial instruments and their corresponding fundraising mechanisms, what matters is, are we ready to be in a team, whether in Argentina, in Silicon Valley, or elsewhere, to make it happen? And the best way to attract that talent that makes it happen is not to be unknown, secret, and ignored. The best way to do that is to be proud about what you are doing and how you are doing, including, oh my God, I am missing a developer, a marketing person. Please join. This is what you would be doing. This is so exciting. And that is what is happening everywhere, including Argentina, that has some excellent world protagonists in the blockchain space, like RSK, Risk, like Sapo, like Ripio, and many others. Some of you may have seen very kindly, El Cronista had a full-page interview with me, an article talking about our plans, where we announced that Network Society, not only the opening of our Buenos Aires operations, but also that we will be investing in exciting projects in Latin America, including Argentina, in areas as different as testing and inspection, as tokenization of jet travel seats, as tokenizing the relationships between sports clubs and their fans. And for us, this is really wonderful, because you may, well, none of us remember, we weren't alive, but you may know that Argentina was the 4th biggest superpower in the world. The word didn't exist at the beginning of the 20th century. And we are free to, you are free to be ambitious and build in the 21st century a role for Argentina through the talent that is here today. Giving it credit, giving it hope that they can achieve, and they will, because they are doing it already. And that is why we are excited about it. AI has a lot of things to do with blockchain. It has a lot of things to do with how we are going to manage and take decisions based on the large data sets that we are building. The reason why AI apparently is becoming so prominent today is due to 3 factors. On one hand, we have very powerful hardware. On the other hand, large amounts of data, and one of the most important, ever smarter algorithms. An example that is in my personal life is that I store my photos, rather than in a shoebox, as it would be 20 years ago, online in the cloud. And I have close to 200,000 photos. And if in the shoebox, I would write in the shoebox what was the what it contained, you know, vacation, summer vacation, winter vacation, whatever else, there's no chance that I will spend the time to label 200,000 photos. And I don't need to, because the AI today is capable of analyzing thousands of different features of every photo. And I can search not by date or location, that is trivial, because it is already contained the time I press the button and take the photo, but I can search for things like people smiling on the beach and sunset. And 2 out of the 200,000 photos will come up with my children doing exactly that. This kind of cognitive superstructure that we are building over the world, where we will have the reasonable expectation, just like a room like this has electricity, any room, any business will have AI in the near future, is what is driving the projects like the self-driving cars that we mentioned at the beginning. Importantly, we are not talking about a conflictual relationship. It is very attractive to look at the dystopian views of Hollywood movies. We entertained by them and they are fun, but they don't represent the future. Because we are allies with the smart machines, our enemies are the dumb machines. And we have to be able to apply ever more powerful hardware in order to make sure that the decisions that we are delegating to these machines are well aligned with our most important objectives, including what is the purpose of the society we live in, what is the purpose of the businesses we build, what is the purpose of our lives as individuals. The social experiment of my chip is exactly that. If I wanted to use it here in this room today, I could do nothing with it. This room is not ready for it yet. And when, after the Q&A, you will, some of you at least, come to see if it is real, and I will tell you, yeah, you can touch it under my skin, the reaction that you will have is the experiment. Because some of you will be excited or curious, many of you will be wary or, you will recoil. And really, what you are touching at that moment is not the chip, it's not my hand. What you are touching is the limit of your own adaptability in a future where you need to train yourself to take advantage of the increasing degrees of freedom we have. The choices, the opportunities where we can go from idea to action very, very rapidly, and we can take advantage of unbounded opportunities with enthusiastic and talented people that I am privileged to have in my team, like Johnny, with incredible support infrastructures like our wonderful guests at St. Andrews here. Thank you. I was told to speak for 45 minutes. I spoke for 43 minutes, so please stay silent while I speak for another 2 minutes now. We have some time for questions instead, and the challenge is, I think, impossible to take on. The students this morning were just incredible. But I'm sure you do have some questions. Oh, I'm happy to have remembered a little new rule that I like to introduce, and we will see. I will not insist if it doesn't work, but if it does, I will be proud. The first question should come from a woman. Any woman? There you go. You will have a microphone, hopefully, coming to you. Yep, just bring it to her. Please.
Yes, I can. My name is Baque. I'm taking the challenge of being the first woman to speak. Do you think that Latin America has really an opportunity in this new world, and why?
Utility, did I understand correctly? Opportunity. Well, yeah, I put it there, right? Imagine, in the Middle Ages, you were born probably a farmer. Your father was a farmer, your grandfather was a farmer, your child and your grandchild, all of them would be farmers. If you were a male, you had a life expectancy of about 30 years, 40 years. If you were a female, you would have to give birth to an average of 8 children. 6 of them would not live more than 5 years. You would have a certain likelihood of dying by childbirth too. And neither of you would be allowed by the penalty of death to leave the vessels, fields where you toiled all your life. You knew about 100 people and very little about the world overall. Compare that to today and what all of you experience. Languages, cultures, opportunities to learn, to grow, to make mistakes. If you made a mistake as late as the 17th century, for example, I told my wife, you know, let's open a tavern. I think we could have a great tavern, and it went bankrupt. I would go in the debtor's prison, and my family would be reduced to abject poverty. Today, most countries have bankruptcy protection laws for limited liability companies in order to increase entrepreneurship and allow those companies to fail without that being a death sentence on those who dare to try but make a mistake. So these are incredible changes that we already had, and now we are going to accelerate this possibility 1,000 times. We needed $2 million of investment to do whatever 20 years ago. 10 years ago, 200,000. Today, 20,000. The same thing, right? The same idea in terms of an investment to start working on that idea. There has been a 3 order of magnitude reduction. And consequently, many, many more teams are trying to do incredible and wonderful things. That is why the types of investments that we make here, pre-seed investments, even if the ticket size is rather small, can make a difference because of large numbers of investments. So yeah, very, very numerous opportunities as long as you take the first step, which is hard, but necessary. Yes, over here, and then here in the front after that. Please.
Hi, my name is Ernesto Ampegor.
Okay, apologies. Go ahead, and then that gentleman, and then here in the front.
Thanks for your perspectives and insights. It seems that intelligence and consciousness have been braided in a linear evolution until now. And it seems that artificial intelligence is going to just boost intelligence from the singularity moment on. You didn't mention the word consciousness in your presentation. What is your vision of the future of both human and artificial consciousness?
Sure. So the examples that I gave are so-called artificial narrow intelligence. What we are referring to in the question is artificial general intelligence, whose ability to solve a problem is universal. If it meets a problem that it cannot solve, it learns how to solve it and just keeps going. The big challenge of that is, how do we control it? Can we? Should we? Is it moral even to try? This January, I participated in Puerto Rico in a conference organized by Elon Musk with a few people invited from DeepMind, from Google, OpenAI, and others, exactly discussing for a few days this topic. How can we build safe and secure artificial general intelligence? You can check it out, Beneficial AGI. And we don't have a definitive answer of how this is going to play out. The only consciousness we know today at human level is the human consciousness. And some of us believe that it is a wonderful evolutionary tool that we gained through biological time, but that it is not universally necessary. We will have very powerful AIs that are, if you ask them, happily respond that no, they are not conscious. Will we be able, and will we want, and will they be happy to create and then join forces with conscious AIs? I personally believe that we will. And there are important reasons. The most important is that there's an entire universe to explore and to understand, and biological humans are especially maladapted to do any of that. We are very happy on this planet. We may be able to adapt to Mars, but very little beyond that, unless we merge with machines. Once again, the chip is a little humble step in this path that will take a long time. And of course, a lot of humans will say, no, thanks. I am gonna stay just like I am today. I don't want to merge with machines. And it is going to be extremely important to respect that position and to create a world and a society where nobody will be forced to do things that they don't think they should. Let's go there.
Thank you. That was my question. Just kidding. No, my question is about education, right? This is the school of our kids, right? So, and they're going to college in a few years. So I'd like to get your view, number one, in what is your view about the educational system at the college degree in general? In the context of what you just described, that with the democratization of information and peer-to-peer learning, and how useful is the educational system today for our kids as they prepare themselves for the future?
Sure. So, Mr. Headmaster.
I like the question.
Very important question. First of all, I don't like the word education. It is what others do to you. I much prefer the word learning, which is what driven by your curiosity, your passion. I like curiosity together with risk-taking, a very healthy disrespect for authority, and other features that we have as children. And the longer we are able to keep those features, including as adults, the better prepared we are to look at the world with an open mind, which is absolutely necessary today. Think about it. 100 years ago, didn't matter from your class. At a certain age, let's say 20 years, society would tell you, okay, now you're an adult, and then for the rest of the life, your position would be very likely fixed. And yes, you could aim to improve the lives of your children, giving them, for example, better education, but as far as you are concerned, not much could be done. Today, if you look at any bookstore, it is full of self-help books, whether they work or not, but the message is you can invest in yourself to improve your condition. Unfortunately, the balance of that is that it doesn't matter your age, society does not necessarily recognize your role as being established forever. If somebody loses their job, employment at an age of 50 years, well, they have to try really hard to find a way to reinvent themselves. And we have a word for that. It's a neologism. It's called neotenia, which is this ability to maintain childlike features in adulthood. So the role of the education system is to create childlike adults who have not been disciplined to sit tight, to be silent, to not speak up, to not ask too many uncomfortable questions, to do a lot of things like that. And as far as my experience this morning, St. Andrews is that kind of environment that nurtures curiosity and can allow a controlled degree of freedom where the minds that mature are going to be extremely fit in the world of today and tomorrow. What is important as well, and I mentioned this with respect to the politicians, is that teachers are put, maybe by the administration, I don't know exactly how this thing works, in a position to be able to say, I don't know. They don't have all the answers, and they cannot. A new tool, a new platform, a new piece of news. For example, this morning I asked the kids if they had a debate in class about vaccinations. And I have a very strong position about vaccinations. I think they are necessary. I do think that the harm created by the desperate search for superstitious solutions of parents who have autistic children is triggering pattern recognition mechanisms that are latching on false information. And the kids said, no, we didn't. So I said, well, why don't you have these debates? And maybe they will. Or a new tool may emerge, you know, whatever is going to be next Facebook. The likelihood that it would be a teacher telling the kids how to use it is zero. The kids should hold those lessons, and the teacher will enjoy those lessons sitting together with them, right? This kind of role reversal is healthy. Many hands, fantastic. We have one in front. She has been waiting for some time. Thank you. First here. And then we will go in the back there.
Well, thank you for your speech. My question has to do with, at least I perceive that Singularity University has a rather optimistic point of view in terms of the future and how it merges with technology. And at the same time, I want to know how does it combine with the idea of some decisions that populations are making in terms of rather questionable ideas, not only in underdeveloped but also in developed countries, about inclusion. And one last comment. A couple of weeks ago there was an article in the New York Times speaking exactly about expectations and people in the States willing to pay rather high quantities of income in education, because their expectations is that their children will not be able to at least sustain or have the same level of access to good jobs as their parents. So how do you see the future in terms of inclusion, technology, and, well, expectations?
Very important question. I am naturally an optimist, right? And so it comes very simply through, it's my stance. I have friends who are naturally pessimists, and we complement each other. I do believe that technology creates problems, and the way to solve those problems is with more technology. At no point, for example, At no point, for example, I expect that we will decide to go back and say, well, maybe 6 of 8 children dying is too much, but yeah, 3 out of 8 is okay. That is what we should do, renouncing the technology that we had. We will go forward. And there will be ways of making mistakes, and we have to be careful to minimize those mistakes because our power is incredibly large. We have very good precedents. There was a conference in 1973 at Asilomar in California among the leading biotechnology researchers when the new tool of recombinant DNA was discovered, and they established the protocols to use that technology in order to avoid mistakes that could lead to millions or billions of people dying when some engineered vector escaped from a laboratory. And now, 40 years later, we know they were right. They were able to analyze, implement, and maintain those protocols, because in the past 40 years we didn't have those biological incidents. So the technologies that we have today need to be carefully analyzed and used similarly, and we have to make sure that we don't misuse them. There will be misuses, oversight is necessary. That is why one of the unexpectedly beautiful careers is to study philosophy. If corporate social responsibility already is a common role in enterprises, ethical boards are going to be universal, because AI is going to be universal, and the best prepared people to be serving on those ethical boards are going to be philosophers. And they will be paid big money, and the parents will say, why don't you go and study philosophy? Because we will have too few of them. Now, the first part of your question regarding inclusion and inequality. So, many technologies are accused to be elitist at the beginning, and rightly so, and necessarily so. There is no alternative. But just like Tesla demonstrated, at first is a crazy sports car, then a very expensive luxury car, and then finally with Model 3, something that more and more people can afford, and they will keep reducing the cost of those cars. This trajectory is followed by every technology, becoming cheaper and more inclusive. Mistakes can be made here by policy that distorts the ability of people of adopting what is best for them. In Argentina, for example, there is no net neutrality. All your phone carriers are proudly advertising free WhatsApp included with your plans or payments, which is horrible, because yeah, WhatsApp kind of works, but shouldn't it be you choosing what to do, what to use, rather than being attracted by the free, apparently free offer? Facebook is paying for that. And India has been able to decide as a country that they didn't want the poisoned apple of this gift. And they refused the money that billions of dollars Facebook was ready to invest in the country in order to create a system like the one that is here in Argentina. So very interesting policy consequences can create a level playing field or an uneven playing field, and have then consequences for inclusivity or others. Let's go in the back for the next question.
Thank you. Yes, my question relates to blockchain technology. I heard many times that people say, I like blockchain technology, I think that it's gonna succeed, it's gonna be something that's gonna change the world. But when it comes to talk about cryptocurrencies, people it's more kind of skeptic, says, no, it's a scam, this won't succeed. My question is, is it possible to see blockchain technology succeeding while the crypto market will fail, or vice versa, or they are inevitably linked? Thank you.
From the point of view of the projects, it was an incredible burden to be successful and be tasked with the responsibility of managing, I don't know, $10 million for a group of 20-something, execute on the roadmap of the white paper that they described, and having to assume the functions of large companies like treasury management, which they haven't or barely even heard of, and decide whether to keep the funds that they received in Bitcoin or Ethereum, or sell some or all for dollars or euro or gold and how to do all of this. And most of them have been less than perfect in executing those unexpected responsibilities. I have been an investor in a project since 2014 called BitNation that works on applying blockchain to conflict resolution, reputation management, and the creation of new digital frameworks for basically what they call digital nations, decentralized digital nations, and they have been incredibly resilient. They were able, and they are able, to keep working across the ups and downs of the markets, not without hurting, they are hurting terribly, but being able to keep going ahead. And as an investor, that is one of the most important characteristics of the entrepreneur that I am looking for, because it doesn't matter how beautiful the plans you are presenting to me, reality is going to be completely different, and your ability to address and overcome the challenges is fundamentally important. So that is what is happening in the blockchain markets as well. You know, everybody that I care about did not give up, but they are just working on deploying ever more useful solutions on blockchain. Let's do this, and then we go in the back, and that one there as well. Yes. Can one of you alert me when I should take the last 2-3 questions, maybe? Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks. You've mentioned that Argentina was, in a time, the fourth global economy in the world. And in that moment, agriculture was a really big, important activity in our country. Do you see any chance or any opportunity in blockchain and agriculture in our country?
Yes. The answer is absolutely. From traceability to authentication and certification, sensors and actuators, the data that is, as a consequence, collected that becomes as valuable or more than the products that the data is relating to, supply chains that become more efficient, are enormous sources of potential new opportunities and wealth. They are also extremely positive for the support infrastructure of the country itself. How many resources are uselessly invested today for inefficiently tracking imports and exports? How much could be done more easily with blockchain? And in Argentina, there is a very interesting precedent of adoption of a technology much faster than others, and these are the QR codes that every business has to put out with their license, right? It is not something that you see in every country. QR codes are very much used in China, for example, including for payments, etc. But the way that Argentina deployed that in the course of a few years universally is a great example of technology adoption. And similarly, regulators, consulting companies, technology companies can work together to do the same for blockchain technology in agriculture as well as in other sectors. Let's go there, a lady in one of the last rows, and then on the other side, a couple of questions.
Hello, my name is Nicole Grumbaum. I'm interested in your vision about policymaking. Right now I'm working in the Secretariat for Digital Government and Innovation Technology, and we're working with artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. And I have two questions. The first one is, which which main recommendation would you do to a policymaker? And the second question is, which country do you think is a role model in these areas?
We are working with a lot of policymaking bodies, with the government of Italy, with the government of Malta, with Andorra, Guernsey, countries big and small. As I mentioned, we met with Argentinian policymakers as well. Malta, in particular for blockchain, is an absolute reference today. And we are helping the local task force to design and implement regulation around artificial intelligence that they are aiming to enact later this year, similarly how they did for blockchain last year. With blockchain, they have been very successful. Many companies moved their legal headquarters and some their operations to Malta. And today, almost half of the volume of crypto exchanges happens through companies in Malta. My recommendation is somewhat simple and not easy to adopt. Every moment, if you can, when you can, stop pretending that the answers are definitive, and as a consequence, incorporate sunsetting rules in the regulations that force you to go back to the drawing table, incorporating what you have learned in the meantime to upgrade the regulations for the next period. And you know, this cannot be maybe every year, but certainly it cannot be like 10 years either. So you will decide what is the right time period. And if the response is, oh my God, this is expensive or wasteful, the answer is the alternative is hypercritical, is delusionary, because unavoidably the regulation that is done in a given time gets old very rapidly, the faster, the more advanced the technology. We were waiting for a couple of people there, and then we will come back here. Thank you very much.
Hi, David. My name is Francisco, and I'm concerned about my children, mainly. This question is about them, and I saw you have 2 children, 2, maybe 3? Well, I have 3 boys.
I showed 2, but I have a third,
I have
a girl.
3 boys. They come to this school.
She was not smiling on the beach.
So they are at a crucial age, I think, because they're shaping their 6, 9, and 10, and they're sort of shaping personalities now. And I see that the whole algorithm and content these days is based on creating addictions. It's based on Fortnite and Netflix, and everything is trying to somehow make them, you know, more addicted to certain contents, right? I don't know if you agree, but I see this, and I am an optimist, as you said, but it's really hard for me to find a way for them to be in contact with technology, to be part of the world today, and tell them, hey, you know, this is not everything. There's a whole reality out there where you can choose, where you can decide what you want, and not be sort of tempted by contents that are not really what you want, but are what the algorithm detects that you couldn't watch next, and it's the lowest, is the easiest, and costless. I don't know the word.
Thank you. I think I understand the question. And
okay, so the question
concern.
basically is how to put them in the right direction with technology and the world that's coming. Thank you.
So thank you very much. First of all, if I told you that I have the right answer, everything else I said wouldn't be believable. But what I can tell you is that empathy, plain, simple human empathy, is an incredibly powerful tool, and that what is balanced what is natural changes through time. So, for example, there's a fairly funny quote of a friend that tells to another friend, listen, I was looking at him and he was so absorbed, alone in the corner. He wouldn't share anything with us. He wouldn't participate, just there looking at this thing. Hours and hours, I couldn't stand it. I went there and took that book away from him. And the quote is from 200 years ago, right? And yes, probably that wasn't healthy either, and the person did the right thing, taking away the book. So being aware of each other is incredibly important, incredibly powerful, and having conversations about what is the right thing to do, what are our expectations, depending on the age, of course, right? And in your case, the kids are pretty young, so it is not yet easy, but maybe you can start and offering alternative physical occupations where initially you insist and then they will have fun because it is fun, is a good way to start. But we will keep doing this with ever new tools as they come about. The last two questions, one there and then the gentleman in the back as well, and I will be here even if the plenary session will be ended. Let's hear it.
Hi, this is Alejandro Waldman. The question is about artificial emotional IQ, and what's your vision and prediction about this? How far can robots go in terms of developing emotional human features, and how far can they go to understand and predict our emotions, and which is at the end what makes us different from them, but they are learning pretty quickly how to develop these things, and your view as an investor about investing in companies that are in this space.
So we are already surrounding ourselves with platforms that are able to analyze and actually program human emotions. It is already happening. When you delegate the decision of what is the next song that you will hear to Spotify, you are allowing a computer to program your emotions, because that song will change your emotional state, and if you enjoy it, you will listen to it. If you skip, the program will learn about your emotions, refining the next recommended song. Also, human decision making is not always rational. We like to believe, and there has been Nobel Prizes awarded on the perfect market hypothesis, but more recently we understood that we are, whether individuals or crowds of people, behaving often in an irrational manner driven by our emotions. So as AIs are going to be assisting us improving our decision making, they will have to be able to take into account these components as well and make us more aware of how we can improve that. The IQ, the intelligence quotient of AIs is potentially going to be very high. We don't know what and if there is a limit. From a mathematical point of view, it doesn't look like there is a limit to how smart a system can be. I have no idea what it means to have an emotional quotient that is 1,000 times more than that of a human, right? Absolutely no idea. Will AIs love each other or us? Oh, absolutely. It will be necessary. Without that, they couldn't coexist. Now, they may use a different term, or we will adopt a different term, it doesn't matter. but there will be this kind of enrichment of our world, and it will be, of course, extremely interesting to explore that area and its implications. Last question, and it was a gentleman, maybe with the one with a beard, who's thinking, no? There was somebody, maybe they left. Oh, we have one here in the front then.
Hello. I had some experience about a year ago trying to purchase Bitcoin and watching operations, and they were pretty cumbersome. And I was wondering where you think we are on the adoption scale in terms of, it's very little user-friendly right now. And on that curve, how you see us coming along.
Yes, yes, oh, absolutely. Even though it is becoming easier and easier. Just as putting all the numbers of a credit card, the expiration date, the CVC security code, and maybe a CAPTCHA, you know, the silly letters that tell the system that you are not a robot, and I am failing them so often that I have started to be convinced that I am a robot. Bitcoin or crypto in general suffers from similar inelegant interfaces. But there are a lot of people hard at work to make them simpler and simpler. Some of you may remember when email systems didn't have the ability to handle attachments, and there were separate pieces of software to encode and decode attachments as strings of letters that would follow the body of the email, and then when you received one, you would have to copy and paste and decode, and you know, something would hopefully come up. And that was so complicated that people didn't use attachments. The first computer, Next, created by Steve Jobs, that made a huge leap in handling WYSIWYG email. What you see is what you get, with beautiful embedded images and attachments and so on. And today, everybody uses them. We have no problem on other platforms either. So Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain have to get easier. They will get easier. Now, the last part of your question is, of course, tricky. Is this the right time to start? So I decided to play an experiment with the kids this morning, and I said, I wrote a book about AI, and it's entitled something new, Alguna Novedad, or something like that in Spanish. And I told them, one of you has the task of collecting all the emails of who is here. Another who has a Bitcoin wallet gives me the QR code or the public key of that wallet. I will send some amount of Bitcoin, a fraction of Bitcoin, to that person, and then you have to share it with all the others. And if you achieve a 90% penetration, which is herd immunity, you infect everybody with Bitcoin, or as many as possible, I will send each of you my book in English or Spanish, or it is also in Italian. And so they are game. They are going to do it, maybe, or we'll see. And I'm happy to do something similar with you as well, because I do think that the time is right. It is worth going through the little pain, not a lot of pain, and it is absolutely worth it. The differential knowledge that you gain with respect to somebody else who doesn't do it puts you on a curve that is like a rocket going to drive you. And if the initial step is hard, it is absolutely worth it. So my recommendation is to do that. And I don't know how we could organize that with the parents, if it is possible, but I'm happy. As I said, I am easy to Google. Reach out if you want to self-organize this. We can do this game, and all of you will have my book too. Thank you very much.